"I've never been with a man this gentle," the stubborn giant mail-order bride whispered. The rugged rancher smiled knowingly. Magnolia Brennan had survived brutal fists and cruel words from men who called themselves her husband. So when the rugged Wyoming rancher, 6'3" of weathered muscle and patient gray eyes, took her trembling, work-scarred hands in his and whispered, "I won't hurt you, Maggie. Not ever," she wanted to believe him. But every stubborn, guarded inch of her 6-foot frame screamed that gentle men were myths told by fools. Cal Bridger smiled knowingly when his mail-order bride stepped off the stagecoach in September 1876, taller than any woman in Broken Bow, shoulders set like a prizefighter's, green eyes daring him to flinch at her size, because he'd seen that armor before in his own mirror after the war taught him that the strongest men chose gentleness, not because they were weak, but because they'd seen what cruelty cost. 3 weeks later, in the lamplight of his Montana ranch house bedroom, after he'd spent every single day proving with patient hands and soft words that love didn't have to leave bruises, Maggie finally let herself shatter in his arms and whispered 7 words that changed everything. "I've never been with a man this gentle." Cal's smile was knowing, tender, heartbroken for what she'd endured. But what had this stubborn giant of a mail-order bride survived that made gentleness feel like a foreign language? What kind of rugged rancher placed an advertisement specifically seeking a woman the world called too much? And why did his gentleness feel more dangerous to Maggie's guarded heart than any violence she'd ever known? The train rattled into Broken Bow Station, trailing coal smoke and broken dreams. Maggie pressed her forehead against the window glass, watching the dusty Wyoming town materialize through the haze like a mirage she wasn't sure she wanted to reach. Her carpetbag sat between her boots, everything she owned in the world stuffed into cracked leather that smelled like Chicago stockyards and desperation. She was 27 years old, 6 feet tall in her worn boots, and she'd learned the hard way that men didn't marry women like her for love. They married them for labor, for something to break when the whiskey hit and the day had been long. Her late husband Silas had made that clear every single night for 8 months until his rotten heart finally gave out during one of his rages. She'd stood over his body feeling nothing but the cold relief of survival. His brother Vernon had tried to claim her next, said she owed the family for Silas's debts, said she'd work it off one way or another with that ugly smile that made her skin crawl. So she'd run, answered an advertisement in the matrimonial news that had 3 words no other ad contained. Height no obstacle. Like someone out there in the vast frontier wilderness didn't think she was a freak. Like someone might actually want what she was, instead of resenting what she wasn't. The conductor called Broken Bow, and Maggie stood, unfolding herself to her full height. The businessman across from her stared. The minister's wife clutched her Bible tighter. Maggie was used to it. She grabbed her bag and stepped onto the platform into September sunshine that felt different than Chicago sun. Cleaner somehow, wider, like the sky had more room to breathe out here. She scanned the small crowd. Families reuniting, cowboys waiting for supplies. And then she saw him. Tall enough that for the first time in her life she had to look slightly up instead of down. Broad-shouldered in a work shirt that had seen honest labor, sandy brown hair that needed cutting. And eyes, God, those eyes, the color of winter sky, watching her with something that looked almost like relief. He held his hat in his hands, twisting the brim, and when their eyes met he smiled. Not the predatory smile she'd learned to fear. Something gentler. Something that made her chest tighten with dangerous hope. "Miss Brennan." His voice was deep, quiet, like he was afraid of startling a wild thing. She lifted her chin, defensive habit as natural as breathing. "Mrs. Brennan, I'm widowed." His expression didn't change. No judgment, no disappointment, just a small nod. "Mrs. Brennan, then. I'm Cal Bridger. Welcome to Broken Bow." He moved toward her trunk, but she was faster, grabbing the handle with hands that had gutted cattle and hauled ice blocks and learned not to need help. "I can manage." Something flickered across his face. Not anger, not impatience. Something that looked almost like understanding. "I'm sure you can," he said quietly. "But it's a 12-mile ride to the ranch, and I'd like to get there before dark." Wolves are active this time of year. The way he said it, matter of fact, not condescending, like he was sharing information, not issuing orders, made her step back. He lifted her trunk like it weighed nothing and loaded it onto a sturdy wagon hitched to 2 horses. "That's Samson and Delilah," he said, patting the nearest horse's neck. "They're gentle as kittens." Maggie watched his hands on the reins as they drove. Large hands, scarred from work but light. The horses responded to pressure so subtle she could barely see it. A man's hands told you everything about him. Silas had held reins like weapons, jerking and pulling, making the animals afraid, because their fear made him feel powerful. Cal's hands were different, strong but careful, commanding but kind. She didn't know what to do with that. "You're quiet," Cal said after a mile of silence broken only by hoofbeats and wagon wheels. "Thinking," Maggie said. "About?" She met his eyes. "Might as well be honest. About what's wrong with you." He didn't look offended. If anything, his smile deepened. "Fair question. You're wondering why a man with a decent ranch needs a mail-order bride. Yes, truth is, it's lonely out here. My wife died 4 years back. Childbirth, baby didn't make it either." Pain flickered across his face like a shadow. "I'm tired of talking to horses and eating my own bad cooking. I want a partner. Someone to build a life with." He paused. "I don't speak of it to be morbid, but I figure we should start honest." His honesty felt like a trap. Men didn't just tell the truth. They told you what you wanted to hear until you were trapped, and the truth came out in fists and fury. But something in his voice made her answer with her own truth. "My husband beat me regularly, died of a bad heart during one of his fits. I married you to escape Chicago, and his brother who wanted to continue the family tradition." She watched for his reaction. Disgust, excitement, pity. Instead, Cal's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed gentle. "No man will raise a hand to you here, Maggie. That's a promise. Men promise lots of things." "I know." He didn't argue, didn't try to convince her. Just let the words sit there like seeds planted in hard ground. They rode in silence through sage and wind. Maggie watched the landscape, vast and empty and beautiful in a way that made her throat tight. No buildings pressing close, no smoke choking the air, no crowd staring at the too tall woman who didn't fit anywhere. Just space, room to breathe. Maybe room to become something other than afraid. The ranch appeared as the sun touched the horizon. A white timber house larger than she'd expected. Barn and corrals and a bunkhouse scattered across land that rolled toward mountains in the distance. Modest but cared for, like someone actually lived here instead of just surviving. Cal helped her down from the wagon, and this close she could smell him. Leather and sage and honest sweat. Not the whiskey and violent smell Silas had carried like cologne. "I know what you're thinking," Cal said quietly. Maggie stiffened. "Do you? You're wondering what the catch is? Why this looks too good to be true?" He met her eyes directly. "There's no catch, Maggie. I need help running this place, and I need company. You need safety and a fresh start. Seems like we might be able to help each other. But I want you to know something right now before you step inside that house." He moved closer, not crowding, just present. "You'll have your own room. There's a lock on the inside of the door if you want it. I won't force anything. We're strangers. I figure we should at least know each other's middle names before we share a bed." Maggie stared at him. "You're not expecting me to... tonight?" "God, no." He actually flushed. "We just met. I'm not an animal, Maggie." Her laugh escaped before she could stop it. Short and rusty from disuse, but real. Cal's smile widened like he'd won something. "Come on," he said. "Let me show you your room, then I'll make us some supper. Fair warning, I wasn't lying about being a terrible cook. But I promise not to poison you on your first night." He picked up her trunk and headed toward the house. Maggie stood in the dusty yard, watching this impossible man disappear through the door. Every instinct screamed that this was a trick, that gentleness was just the bait before the trap snapped shut. But her feet moved forward anyway, following him into the house, into the unknown, into the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, not all men were wolves in human skin. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a question. Could she trust this? Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to recognize the difference between safety and another pretty lie? The house smelled like wood smoke and coffee and something warm she couldn't name. Cal was lighting lamps against the gathering dark. "Your room's upstairs," he said. "First door on the right. Take your time settling in. Supper will be ready in an hour." Then he left her alone. Didn't hover. Didn't watch to see if she'd run. Just gave her space like it was the most natural thing in the world. Maggie climbed the stairs slowly, testing each step like it might collapse. The room he'd given her had a real bed with a wedding ring quilt, a dresser, a window with actual curtains, and a lock on the inside of the door. She tested it. It worked. She sat on the bed and it didn't creak. Just held her weight like it was made for someone her size. For the first time in 8 months, Maggie let herself breathe all the way out. Maybe she'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe this was just a different kind of trap. But tonight, she had a locked door and a soft bed, and a man downstairs who said he wouldn't hurt her. Tonight that was enough. The smell of burning bacon woke Maggie before dawn. She jerked upright in the unfamiliar bed, heart hammering, before remembering where she was. Wyoming, the Bridger Ranch. A man downstairs who promised gentleness, like it was currency that still had value. She dressed quickly in the work clothes she'd brought. Men's trousers altered to fit her frame, a sturdy shirt, boots that had walked Chicago stockyard floors slick with blood and worse. If Cal Bridger expected a delicate wife in calico and aprons, he was about to be disappointed. She found him in the kitchen, swearing softly at a smoking skillet. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. "You're up early. Stockyard hours. 4:30 for 12 years. She moved past him and took the skillet from his hand before he could protest. "You're burning it. Too high heat, too little grease." She scraped the charred bacon into a bowl for the dogs she assumed he had, started fresh. Cal watched her work with that same quiet attention he'd given everything yesterday, not staring, just observing, like he was learning her the way he'd learned his horses. "You don't have to cook," he said. "I can handle my own breakfast." "Clearly you can't." She cracked eggs into the skillet with practiced efficiency. Where do you want me working today?" The question seemed to surprise him. "I figured you'd want to rest. Get settled." "I didn't come here to be decorative, Mr. Bridger. I came to work. I pull my weight or I'm just another mouth taking what I haven't earned." Something sad moved through his expression. "It's Cal. And you don't have to earn your place here, Maggie. You're my wife. This is your home now." Wife. The word sat strange in her mouth. She'd been a wife before, and it had meant servant, punching bag, thing to be used. She slid eggs onto 2 plates, added the bacon she'd rescued, set one in front of Cal. "I work better than I sit idle." "So where do you need me?" Cal studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Chicken coop needs mucking and fresh straw. It's dirty work. I've gutted cattle carcasses. I think I can handle chicken shit." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Fair enough." They worked in parallel that first morning. Maggie in the chicken coop, Cal mending fence line within shouting distance. She could feel him checking on her, not hovering but present, like he was making sure she was real and hadn't vanished in the night. The work felt good, honest. Her muscles remembered this rhythm: lift, carry, spread, repeat. By noon her back ached and her hands were filthy, and she felt more human than she had in months. Cal appeared in the coop doorway carrying 2 tin cups. "Water break." She straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead with her sleeve. He handed her a cup and she drank gratefully. The water was cold, clean, tasted like snow and stone. "You're a hard worker," Cal said. "I'm used to hard work." "I can see that," he paused. "But you don't have to prove anything to me, Maggie. I already know you're capable. That's why I chose your letter." She looked at him sharply. "Oh, what do you mean, chose my letter?" "I got 43 responses to my advertisement. 42 of them were from women who wrote about being good cooks and obedient wives and skilled with needle and thread." He smiled. "Your letter said you could haul ice blocks, had worked stockyards since you were 14, could rope and ride and weren't afraid of blood or hard winters. You said you needed a partner, not a master, and you'd pull your weight if I'd give you a chance at a clean start." He met her eyes. "That's what I needed, Maggie. A partner. Someone strong enough to build something with me, not someone who'd break under the weight of this life." Her throat went tight. I told you I was tall, 6 feet. I told you most men found that off-putting. I know. That's why I added height no obstacle to my advertisement. I wanted you to know that your strength wouldn't be a problem here. It would be an asset. Maggie stared at this impossible man. Why? Why what? Why do you want strong instead of soft? Most men want women they can control. Cal's expression went distant, haunted. I was at Shiloh and Tetum, watched boys barely old enough to shave tear each other apart because someone told them violence made them men. I killed people, Maggie, because I had to, because it was war. And when I came home, I swore I'd never choose cruelty again. Not in how I treat animals, not in how I treat people, and sure as hell not in who I'd share my life with. He looked at her directly. I don't want someone I can control. I want someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong and work beside me and build something that lasts. That takes strength. Real strength. The kind you have. She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to hold this kind of honesty without dropping it. So she went back to work. That afternoon, Cal was breaking a new horse in the corral. Maggie watched from the fence, expecting the usual violence, rope and force, and breaking a wild thing's spirit through dominance. Instead, Cal moved like water, patient, waiting for the horse to come to him instead of forcing submission. He spoke constantly, voice low and soothing, promising safety with every word. The horse, a grey mare with wild eyes, slowly, impossibly gentled, came to his outstretched hand, let him touch her trembling neck. By sunset, Cal was running his hands along her flanks, and the mare stood still afraid, but trusting this human wouldn't hurt her. Maggie's chest ached watching it. This was strength without violence, power without force. Everything she'd been told was impossible. Cal caught her staring and smiled that knowing smile. She just needed to know she was safe, he said simply. Once she knew that, everything else got easier. He wasn't talking about the horse anymore. Maggie knew it. He knew it. The words hung between them like a bridge she didn't know how to cross. That night, after a supper that didn't burn, Cal said goodnight and disappeared into his own room. Left her alone with her locked door and her confusion, and the terrifying suspicion that she might have accidentally found exactly what she'd stopped believing existed. A good man. A gentleman. A man who chose strength over cruelty and meant it all the way through. She lay in bed listening to the Wyoming wind and wondered what the hell she was supposed to do with that. The storm hit on the 7th night like the sky was tearing itself apart. Lightning turned the bedroom white bright, and thunder shook the house timbers, and Maggie woke up screaming. Not here. She was back in the Chicago cellar. Silas had locked her in during a storm just like this. Left her in the dark with the rats and the rising water while he drank upstairs. She'd clawed at the door until her fingers bled, begged until her voice gave out. Learned that screaming just made him angrier when he finally came back. A knock on her door, soft, respectful. Maggie, you all right? I heard you cry out. She couldn't answer. Her throat was locked around the scream she'd learned not to make. I'm coming in, just to check. That okay? She made a sound. Not quite agreement, but not refusal. The door opened slowly. Cal stood there in his nightshirt, hair mussed from sleep, lamplight from the hall turning him gold at the edges. He took one look at her face, and something in his expression broke open with understanding, bad memories. His voice was so gentle it hurt. She nodded, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Lightning flashed again, and she flinched violently. Can I sit? Just on the edge of the bed. I won't touch you unless you say. She nodded again. He sat, leaving 2 feet of space between them, close enough to be present, far enough that she could breathe. My first battle, Shiloh. I couldn't sleep through thunderstorms for 3 years after. They sounded too much like artillery. Took a long time before storms were just storms again. His voice was steady, anchoring. What did he do to you, Maggie? Lock me in the cellar. During storms. In the dark. Sometimes for days. The words came out broken, jagged. Said I needed to learn obedience. That the dark would teach me to be grateful for his light. Cal's hands fisted on his thighs, but his voice stayed gentle. I'm sorry that happened to you. You're safe here. This house has no locked cellars, and I won't abide darkness as punishment. You hear me? You're safe. Lightning cracked close enough to rattle the windows. Maggie's whole body jerked. "Can I hold you?" Cal asked quietly. "Just hold you, nothing more." Sometimes human touch helps. She should say no. But the storm was so loud, and she was so tired of being alone with her fear, and his eyes held nothing but honest concern. "Yes." He moved carefully, telegraphing every motion so she could track his hands. Wrapped his arms around her from the side, strong but not constraining. A shelter she could leave any time. Instead, she turned into his chest and broke completely, sobbed against his heartbeat while he held her and stroked her hair and murmured promises into the dark. "You're safe. You're here with me. It's just weather. You're safe. I've got you. I won't let anything hurt you. You're safe." Over and over like a prayer. Like he could rebuild her reality with repetition and gentleness. The storm passed. Maggie's tears slowed. She pulled back, mortified. "I'm sorry. I'm not usually—" "Don't." Cal's thumb brushed her cheek, wiping away the tear tracks. "There's no shame in fear, Maggie. Only in how we treat each other's fear. Can you sleep now?" She nodded, exhausted. "I'll leave my door open. You need anything, just call." He stood to leave. Maggie caught his hand. "Cal? Yeah? Thank you for not making me feel weak." His smile was sad and tender. "You're the strongest person I know, Maggie Brennan Bridger. A storm doesn't change that." After he left, she lay in the dark, still feeling the ghost of his arms, gentle, safe, real, and terrifying, because what if she let herself believe it? What if she let herself need this, and it disappeared? 3 weeks after the storm, Maggie found Cal in the barn at sunset grooming horses. Golden light slanted through the gaps in the timber, turning dust motes into floating gold. She'd been working beside him all day, mending tack, and her hands smelled like leather oil, and her body ached in that good way that meant honest labor. But something had shifted inside her, something that made her brave or foolish or maybe both at once. She was humming without realizing it, some tune from childhood she'd forgotten she knew. Cal looked up, smiled that gentle smile that undid her every time. "I like hearing you hum. You do it when you're content." She stopped, embarrassed. "Sorry, don't apologize. It's a good sound." He moved to check the horse she'd been grooming, their hands touching on the brush handle. Neither pulled away. The air between them changed, thickened, became something electric and terrifying and inevitable. "Maggie, can I ask you something?" His voice was low, careful. "All right, if I wanted to court you proper. Take you on rides, bring you flowers, kiss you goodnight. Would that be welcome?" Her heart hammered against her ribs. "We're already married. Legally. Not in all the ways that matter." He turned to face her fully. "I want to know you, Maggie. Really know you. I want you to trust me. And I want to earn that trust." "Why?" The word came out broken. "I'm not the kind of woman men court. I'm the kind they use and resent." "Then you've known the wrong kind of men." He stepped closer, not crowding, just present. "I see you. Your strength, your stubbornness, your wounded places, and your growing joy. I see all of it, and I want all of it." She looked up at him, this impossibly gentle man who'd shown her nothing but patience and respect. "I'm scared." "Of me? Of this? Of wanting something good and having it turn bad?" Cal nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "I can't promise I'll never disappoint you. I'm human. I'll make mistakes. But I can promise I'll never hurt you deliberately, never use your trust against you, never make you small to make myself feel big." Something in her chest cracked wide open. She kissed him then, sudden, unpracticed, desperate, pouring 3 weeks of confusion and want and terror into the press of her lips against his. He froze for half a heartbeat, then responded carefully, letting her control the kiss, letting her explore, letting her pull back when fear crept in. "Was that all right?" she asked, breathless. "No, that was perfect." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Can I kiss you back?" She nodded. This kiss was different. He showed her what desire could be without force. Gentle pressure, coaxing, not demanding. One hand cradling her face like she was precious despite her strength. When they broke apart, she was trembling. "Your room or mine?" she whispered. "Maggie, we don't have to—" "I want to. I'm terrified, but I want to. I want to know what it's supposed to be like. What happened next in Cal's small bedroom, with moonlight painting silver across the quilt, was revelation. He moved with the same patience he'd shown the wild mare, constantly asking permission, praising her, stopping immediately when muscle memory made her flinch. "Hey, look at me. It's just me. We're safe. Do you want to stop?" "No, please, I want this. I want you." "Then we'll go slower. You're in control here, Maggie. Always." Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing gentle patterns on her bare shoulder. She was trembling, but not from fear, from the overwhelming realization that touch could be tender, that her body could feel pleasure instead of pain, that intimacy could be beautiful. "Cal?" Her voice was small, wondering, barely audible. "I've never been with a man this gentle." The words hung in the lamplight like a confession, like a revelation, like a gift she'd been too afraid to believe she could give. Cal's chest tightened under her cheek. He tilted her face up to meet his eyes, and his smile was knowing. Sad for what she'd suffered, grateful she'd found him, tender with understanding. "You deserve gentleness all along, Maggie. Every woman does. Every person does." She kissed him again, tasting salt from tears she didn't know she'd cried. "Teach me that this is real. Teach me it stays gentle. That you won't change. Every day for the rest of our lives," he promised, voice rough with emotion. "I'll show you that love doesn't have to hurt. That strength and gentleness are the same thing. Every single day." She buried her face in his neck and let herself believe it. This stubborn giant of a woman who'd survived violence and despair. This rugged rancher who'd chosen gentleness in a hard world. Together in the Wyoming darkness, building something that would last. Love without cruelty. Partnership without dominance. Home. 5 years later, Maggie would stand on that same porch, watching her son ride beside Cal and her daughter chase chickens, and she'd remember this night. The night she learned that gentlemen weren't myths, that her size wasn't a curse, that she deserved softness and got to keep it. But tonight, she just held on to Cal Bridger and whispered thank you into his skin. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for showing me what love is supposed to look like." Outside, the Wyoming wind sang through the cottonwoods. Inside, two broken people became whole. And somewhere in the vast frontier darkness, another woman was reading an advertisement that said, "Height no obstacle," wondering if she dared to hope. The answer was yes. Always yes. If this story moved you, if Maggie and Cal's journey touched your heart, click that like button so more people can find this tale of gentle strength in a hard world. Share it with someone who needs to know that love doesn't have to hurt. And hit that notification bell, because next week we're bringing you another powerful story of survival, redemption, and the kind of love that changes everything. These are the stories that matter. The ones that remind us gentleness is strength, and stubborn hearts can still learn to trust. Don't miss what's coming next. Your story might be waiting here too.